Hi fellow rock rebels, and welcome back to Backstage Pass Rock News. Michael Anthony, the humble yet powerful bassist of Van Halen, was more than just a member of the band. He was the heartbeat, the soul that added depth to their legendary sound. But behind the scenes, his journey was marred by betrayal, backstabbing, and a relentless attempt by his bandmates to erase his contributions. Today, we dive deep into the darker side of Van Halen, exploring the tension, the egos, and the shocking moves that nearly wiped Michael Anthony from the band's history. In the early days of Van Halen, Michael was treated as an equal, sharing in the band's success and fame. His booming bass lines and signature high harmonies became the backbone of their music. But as Van Halen's fame grew, so did Eddie Van Halen's and David Lee Roth's egos, leading to decisions that would systematically diminish Michael's role in the band. According to Noel Monk, the band's manager during their early years, Van Halen was known as DEA, drugs, ego, and alcohol. Monk paints a picture of a band torn apart by excess and internal strife. While the bandmates often found themselves at odds with one another, they unexpectedly united against the one person that didn't deserve it, Michael Anthony. Typical post-concert meal, with David Lee Roth holding court, critiquing the night's performance, when Eddie Van Halen decided to add fuel to the fire. But instead of calling out Roth, Eddie turned his criticism toward Michael. He questioned Michael's contributions, suggesting that because Michael didn't write music or lyrics, he didn't deserve an equal share of the band's earnings. Eddie's brother, Alex Van Halen, quickly backed him up, raising similar concerns about Michael's value to the band. And then, in a shocking display, Roth walked over to Michael's seat and slammed his plate of food on top of Michael's, sending food and glass flying everywhere. The message was clear. Michael was no longer considered an equal. Michael, ever the professional, quietly stood up and walked out of the room. But the humiliation didn't end there. A few weeks later, the trio returned to Noel Monk with a new demand. They wanted to cut Michael out of the royalties. They argued that since Michael didn't write any of the music, he didn't deserve writing credit or song royalties, not only moving forward, but even for their latest album, 1984, which had already been released. Imagine that at the peak of their fame, Van Halen decided to renege on an agreement they made from the very beginning. This wasn't just a financial decision. It was a betrayal, a cold and calculated move to undermine a bandmate who had been with them since the start. And while they felt justified in their actions, it's clear that this decision was driven by more than just business. According to Monk, Michael was well loved by everyone, the only member who seemed genuinely grateful to be part of Van Halen. Michael's happiness and humility stood in stark contrast to their own struggles with fame, ego, and substance abuse. On June 20th, 1984, Michael Anthony, on his 30th birthday, signed a new agreement with Van Halen. Under this new contract, Michael was no longer entitled to any writing credits or royalties from the 1984 album and beyond. It was a bitter pill to swallow, but Michael had little choice. The band was in the middle of a tour, and the unspoken threat of being kicked out if he didn't comply loomed large. Adding insult to injury, around the same time, Eddie Van Halen was already floating the idea of replacing Michael with Billy Sheehan, the nimble-fingered bassist from Talas. While no official offer was made, it was clear that Eddie had a backup plan if Michael didn't sign the new contract. So why did they do it? Why did Eddie, Alex, and Roth decide to turn on their band brother at the height of their success? Was it deep-rooted jealousy? Resentment that Michael wasn't as miserable as they were? Or was it a simple matter of wanting what they felt was a fair share? Eddie, in particular, had been irked by Michael for years, long before the 1984 tour. In Steve Rosen's book Tone Chaser, Eddie admitted that Michael's equal share of royalties bothered him. He felt that Michael didn't deserve the same compensation because, in Eddie's eyes, Michael did nothing. Eddie even went so far as to say that if Michael ever left Van Halen, he'd never play again because he wasn't good enough. These were harsh words, revealing a deep-seated frustration that Eddie harbored for years. Yet despite this animosity, Michael continued to show up, even as his role was diminished. He almost got kicked out of the band, but was allowed to stay on the condition that he attended every band session, even if he had nothing to contribute. And through it all, Michael Anthony remained silent. With rare exceptions, like a few comments from Roth, Michael has always taken the high road when talking about his time with Van Halen. He's never publicly lashed out or spoken ill of his bandmates, despite the way they treated him. It's a testament to his character, a stark contrast to the chaos and bitterness that often surrounded the rest of the band. Today, Michael Anthony is recognized as the incredible talent. He always was a bassist who brought depth and energy to Van Halen's sound, and a vocalist whose harmonies are still unmatched in rock. And while Eddie Van Halen's legacy as a guitar virtuoso will never be disputed, it's important to remember that Van Halen was more than just one man. It was a band that included Michael Anthony, whose contributions should never be forgotten. So the next time you crank up a Van Halen track, pay attention to those bass lines and harmonies. That's Michael Anthony, steady, reliable, and always delivering the goods, even when he was treated like an outsider. In the end, he's the one who got the last laugh, proving that true talent can't be erased. So today's poll question is, was Eddie Van Halen right to criticize Michael Anthony's contributions to the band? Head over to our poll to leave us your vote, and leave us a comment. Until next time, Rock Rebels, live life loud.